Welcome back, folks. Chapter 4, Lesson 5. Chapter 4, Lesson 6, Multiplying and Dividing Integers. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to pause, check out your work from the previous assignment. Come on back when you're ready. Go ahead and scroll down now. Pause and come back when you're ready. And let's scroll down a little more. And pause and come back when you're ready. All right, here we go with today's stuff, ladies and gents. We're going to do one more day of subtracting. We'll probably review that tomorrow, but for now, let's get into multiplication and division of integers, all the while remembering that eventually we'll get into two-step, three-step, multi-step complex equations with positive and negative integers, decimals, fractions, you name it. So here we go. I changed the problems around slightly. If you want extra problems to do, stick to what was originally planned, 23 to 62, 18 to 52, but those are extras. For everybody else, let's do 23 to 58 from page 101, 23 to 51 from page 103. Pause and come on back when you are ready. And so here we go. Biggest point for today, multiplying and dividing integers, the rules are very different from adding and subtracting. Look at multiplication. I want you to think about what is multiplication. Multiplication is repeated addition, right? So if I say, okay, what does 3 times 4 mean? It means 3 sets of 4, 4 and 4 and another 4, which naturally means 12. So then what if I would ask you, what is 3 times negative 4 using repeated addition? Again, we have 3 sets of negative 4. Negative 4 and another negative 4, so you're going deeper underwater, and another negative 4. So 3 negative 4s will be negative 12. Ultimately, here's the rule. Positive number multiplied by a negative number is a negative because you're repeatedly going down, down, down to down, down. So when I say negative 15 times 3, in my head I'm seeing 3 negative 15s. So down 15, down 15, down another 15. We are certainly underwater at negative 45. 8 negative 6s. Down negative 6, down negative 6, down negative 6, repeatedly down negative 6. The answer is not 48. We are underwater 48 feet. Negative 9 times 11, I'm thinking 11 times negative 9. They do, after all, mean the same thing, using the commutative property of multiplication. And so over and over again, going down 9 means we are definitely in debt. And in this case, we owe $99. 7 negative 4s, down negative 4, down negative 4, repeatedly down negative 4, which means we are still in debt at a negative 28. Now, let's look at a table. So now you know what a positive times a negative means. Let's review what's a negative times a negative. Well, first of all, keep following the table. 2 negative 5s, go down 5, down 5. 1 negative 5, go down 5. 0 negative 5s will 0 of anything. Now, what would the pattern do if you continued along these lines? If you look over here, you probably can see that pattern. Negative 5 times negative 1 will be a positive 5. Negative 5 times negative 2 will be a positive 10. So the rule is that a negative multiplied by another negative is positive. The big question is why? And it's all, ladies and gentlemen, about opposites. So remember what we just said about repeated multiplication, repeated addition, excuse me. If that negative symbol weren't there, we would ask you to go down 9, down 9, down 9 6 times. But the negative, so you would think the answer would be negative 54. But they don't just ask for all those negative 9s, they ask for the opposite. So naturally, the opposite of going down repeatedly would be going up repeatedly. In like manner, imagine adding all these negative 4s together, 7 sets of negative 4, and you're tempted to say negative 28. But it doesn't just say 7 sets, it says the opposite of all those negative 4s, which means now instead of decreasing our money, we are increasing our money repeatedly, thereby making, whoops, I forgot to change that answer. thereby making positive 28. How about we say go down 3, go down 3, go down 3 repeatedly? No, that asks for the opposite of decreasing $3. So I imagine increasing $3 repeatedly to get to 36. And naturally, the opposite of negative 8s would be a bunch of positive 8s for a final answer of 40. Totally up to you whether you write that plus symbol in or not. So as you can see, the answer is really focused very much on changing it to opposites. In this case, we don't want to add a bunch of negative 8s. We want the opposite of all those negative 8s, making a positive 8. Now, I'm not a big fan of shortcuts. This is what the teacher had from previous year. If you have a negative times a positive, hey, guess what? What is the opposite of a positive? It's a negative. What if you have a positive times a negative? Well, if you repeatedly go down, the answer is going to be negative. What if you had a negative times a negative? Well, the opposite of all this going down would be going up. So I'm not a fan of integer man at all. I just wanted to show you where some people come up with this stuff. But really you need to focus on opposites. Using our order of operations, I don't even like PEMDAS, you know that's not true. There are only 4 steps in the order of operations, and we need to remember that multiply and divide are equally strong and go left to right. We know the same about add and subtract. So 7 5s is 35. The opposite of a negative is a positive. Meanwhile, we then need to multiply by negative 3. So repeatedly go down 3 over and over and over again, and you are below water. Negative 4 times 2. Well, I see 2 negative 4s, which is down $8, or down 8 groups. 8 negative 5s would be negative 40, but the opposite of a negative would be a positive. 6 negative 1s, if I dive down a foot and a foot and a foot and a foot repeatedly, I'm going to get to negative 6. Now in my mind, I'm envisioning here 8 negative 6s, so I continue to dive down repeatedly to get a negative 48. The other way to think about it, the opposite of all those going up 8s would be going down 8s. Remember what a power means? It means multiplying a number repeatedly by itself, which means in this case we would need, because of the exponent, 3 of them. So negative 2 times negative 2, the opposite of that negative 2, we are going up repeatedly to get to 4. 4 times negative 2, 4 times we go down, 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 and down. Means we are underwater, negative 8. If we were asked to do the same thing with algebra, you guessed it, negative 6 groups of negative 3. The opposite of all those negatives would be positive 18. Negative 3 multiplied by positive 4 multiplied by negative 5. I'm going to go ahead and multiply the opposite of all those positive 4s would be negative 4s, getting down to negative 12. And the opposite of all those negative 5s would be positive 5s, getting up to a positive 60. Last example of multiplication, negative 2 times positive 4 times negative 5. Negative 2 times 4, the opposite of positive would be negative. Negative 8 times negative 5, and the opposite of negative returns us to positive. That, ladies and gents, is multiplication. Let's talk division. Now imagine 35 split into 7 parts, no big deal. But what about dividing down negative 30? Let's do this one. Let's do this one. So all in all, negative 35 going down, and we're splitting it up into 7 parts. So 1, a different color here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, as you can imagine, if you owe $35 and you split it up into parts, then everybody owes money. Just like multiply 35 divided, wait a second. 35 split into 7 parts is 5. but the opposite of all those positives gets us to negative. And negative 35 split into 7 parts, but wait a second, the opposite of all those negatives are positive. It really is all about opposites. Doesn't matter who's bigger, doesn't matter who's smaller, it's all about opposites. So just like multiplying, we can say that a negative divided by a positive, if you split a big die into parts, then each of those parts will be negative. Positive split up would look positive, but then if you take the opposite, it returns to a negative. And naturally, if you split a negative up into parts and then take the opposite of a negative, it will return to a positive. It is really all about opposites, not about shortcuts. So we review $25 of debt split into 5 people. Well, everybody owes money. $48 of debt split into 6. Wait a second. The opposite of all those positives is in debt. Negative 25 split into negative. Well, hold on. Before you're tempted to say that, remember that the opposite of all those negatives is an increase. And the opposite of all those negatives is also an increase. Let me do a couple of these. I'm going to go ahead and scratch this example. 18 divided by B, which is negative 3, multiplied by C, which is negative 2. Now don't forget, order of operations says that multiply and divide are equally strong, and therefore we must go left to right. 18 split into 3 parts, and the opposite of that positive is a negative 6. 6 times we go down 2, you're tempted to say negative 12, but wait a second. The opposite of all those going down would be going up. For the last example, 18 plus a negative 3 divided by negative 5. Now, some of you found out the hard way getting into this. You must do your multiply out, or excuse me, compute out the numerator almost like it has grouping symbols. Before you can split something up into 5 groups, you have to ask, what is it you're splitting up? So 18 and a negative 3, we're still above water, but as soon as you divide that into 5 parts and then take the opposite of being above water, you are now below water. Naturally, if you take 0 of anything, it's 0. But imagine this. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 6 divided by 1 is 6. What's 6 divided by? Wait a second. Can you take $6 and split it into groups of 0 and still have $6? Impossible. That is impossible. Therefore, we say that number is undefined. You'll hear more about that with slope later on. It is impossible to divide a number by 0. So to review, multiplication and division is all about opposites. If you see the opposite of a negative, you're going to get a positive. If you see the opposite of a positive, you're going to get a negative. If you repeatedly go down, then your answer is down. If you repeatedly go up, then your answer is up. Division is no different. The opposite of a negative is a positive. The opposite of a positive is a negative. The opposite of a positive is a negative. Back to your homework, ladies and gents. Kind of a bit of problems tonight. Take your time. Let me know if I can help, and do well.